standard for big commercial wind turbines. They finally got this through the Legislative Rules Committee on Thursday afternoon. And Mike, what did they come up with?
There's a 39 decibel, roughly speaking, there's a 39 decibel nighttime limit on how much sound a wind turbine can produce, and a 42 decibel daytime limit measured 100 feet from the outside of neighboring residences.
Is that more or less strict than what we've had previously?
It's less, or it's more strict than what has been in place. In some places, it's kind of hard to. This was one of the things that Margaret Cheney, one of the commissioners, was trying to explain. It's hard to really compare them directly because there are so many different ways of measuring it. But they've been after 30 decibels measured inside of a house since the beginning, is what she said, and I think that there's a lot of evidence to support that.
If you listen to what has been hours and hours of discussion on the conversation about what sound, frequency, low frequency, etc., a large wind turbine makes, it gets really technical and complicated pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that LCAR, the legislative committee, that was one of their concerns, is that they didn't want to second guess the Public Utilities Commission, because the Public Utilities Commission has spent hours and hours and hours on this.
Well, 2 weeks ago around this table we were talking about this and how the folks, especially up in Franklin County and Vermonters for a Clean Environment, who oppose these large wind turbines, how furious they were at what they perceived to be the legislature's second guessing of the PUC and what they thought was, in fact, there was a banner unfurled on Thursday afternoon at the conclusion of this hearing that accuses the Democrats on the Legislative Rules Committee of being corporate stooges for the wind industry, something that Senator Mark McDonald sort of laughed at the end in a good-natured way. But we asked him whether these new sound standards would discourage any more large commercial wind projects, and here's what he said.
Only time will tell. There probably were a couple, some turbines that are up today that might meet this new standards, but we will. There's no one's going to measure that now. But I think most people would say there a few of them wouldn't have made it.
There's the banner that we were talking about. The existing commercial projects won't be measured because they're grandfathered. This only affects the largest turbines in the future. Is that your understanding?
Yes, it's for new applications for projects.
And gone is the proposed rule that would have required a distance setback from the nearest residential house of 10 times the turbine height.
Yes, that was requested by lawmakers. Requested that to be removed last time we met 2 weeks ago, and that was finalized as it was fully deleted by this meeting yesterday.
The wind industry, though, is raising some alarm over these new standards, which Margaret Cheney pointed out, despite what Senator McDonald had said 2 weeks ago, these are not the most stringent in the country. Still, we don't know whether is it going to kill the wind industry in Vermont or not? I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, the renewable energy advocates are not happy with this. Neither are the people who are concerned or opposed to large wind projects. They both have things that they're upset about in these rules, and there is some concern. Renewable Energy Vermont said that VPIRG said that this would essentially take utility scale wind off the table, maybe not entirely, but make it very difficult for developers to get these kind of projects. And part of that depends also on the sound standards have an exception if the neighbor will agree to allow you to waive that requirement. So part of this depends on whether neighbors of these projects in the future will agree to grant that permission. So it's hard to tell exactly how it's going to all play out.
I think that's going to be an interesting thing too, is to see how the wind industry reacts to these limits in terms of trying to persuade neighbors to basically buy into projects, because it sounds like that might be their only option in a lot of cases for some of these projects.
Unless you want to put the turbines further away from the existing neighborhoods.
Yep, and Well, yeah, and depending on who you believe, there may or may not be a lot of sites to do that in.
Well, we'll see how this, whether this quells what has been a very rancorous debate for many years at the state capitol, as has the scandal involving Jay Peak.